If you somehow didn't read the title, this video is about Max Steel versus Ben 10. First, I have to lay down some ground rules. Ben won't have access to Alien X for obvious reasons, and Max will be only using his Turbo Blue mode because frankly Max from the earlier seasons is far more cool of a character. So this video will have two parts. The first one will be me describing the different powers Max Steel has because most people know about Ben 10, but not as many about Max Steel. And the second part of the video will be me saying Max enters this form, Ben counters this way, and seeing who would end up losing first by being unable to counter the other. With Max getting to go first because frankly, he has the net disadvantage here because he has way less forms, technically, depending on how you see it. So now into the powers and abilities of Max Steel. And obviously heavy spoilers for Max Steel here. So Max is a part human, part alien, whose power is generating tons of energy, namely tachyon energy, and his buddy Steel allows him to control this energy, and even the two combined allow them to transform into different modes. First is the Turbo Base mode, also known as the Steel Suit. Max is actually wearing this at all times unless Steel is occasionally off of him, but that is a very rare moment. The two are permanently bonded, and the Turbo Base mode doesn't really give Max many powers, however it does function as simple armor. Next up is Turbo Strength mode. This was the first form that Max unlocked and is one of his strongest, and uses energy to do so. It can also use excess energy to get even bigger and stronger, however this risks Max depletes his energy, though not nearly as much as many of his other forms. It's an almost non-existent risk. However, it's not shown to get much bigger, and it's definitely implied that it doesn't get very big at Max. The main weakness of this form is that he is very slow in this form due to the amount of size he has. This one isn't made to run fast, it's made to hit hard. I'll give a brief mention to Turbo Camouflage mode, which allows Max to look like he's wearing normal clothes and not the armor, although he still is. Next up is Turbo Flight. Turbo Flight allows Max to obviously fly, and it doesn't take up as much energy as some of his later flying modes, however it does go relatively quick. It also allows Max to do stuff in space, however other flying modes are far more suited for that environment. Then there's Turbo Scuba mode. It does just about what you'd expect. It's a water suit. It allows him to swim. The suit is also able to withstand ocean pressures, which make it very resistant. It also allows Max to resist the cold of the water. Turbo Super Mode is one of Max's lamest looking abilities, however it allows Max to have quite the variety of different powers at his disposal at one time. It has natural strength and durability, however quotes allow it to use laser vision, get even stronger, fly, and hacking abilities. It should be noted that Steel loves this suit while Max hates it. Next up is Turbo Speed, which allows Max to go very fast. With supersonic speeds and really fast reflexes, this suit is almost the complete package, however, it takes a lot of energy to use. Next up is Turbo Stealth mode. It's effectively a worse version of his base mode. He loses agility, durability, and strength in favor of stealth capabilities. In this mode, his steps are entirely silent and he can go invisible. Then there's Turbo Cannon mode. This one definitely being inspired by Cannonbolt from Ben 10. It allows Max to turn into a ball and blast around unstoppably. However, it does take quite a bit of Max's turbo energy. Next up is Turbo Clone mode. It allows Max to copy himself into a small group or a moderate infantry. In the later seasons, Max and Steel even learned that they can use this while using other modes. However, it does require quite a bit of focus, a decent amount of energy, and the clones aren't exactly as durable as the real thing. Then there's Turbo Heat mode, which allows Max to shoot fire in all sorts of ways, however it takes lots of concentration and energy. Next is Turbo Jet mode, a far faster version of Turbo Flight that can use its fat cannons as giant cannons to attack enemies instead of flying. However, this form takes up some of the most energy of any of Max's modes, so in most situations, Turbo Flight is the better mode to use, though this mode is also Max's most preferable mode for space travel. Then there's Turbo Spike mode, which has whips and spikes and all sorts of violent stuff to it. This mode is physically weaker, but it can make itself stronger by using more turbo energy. Then there's Turbo Nova mode, a very offensive form with a giant cannon. It is highly durable and it takes a lot of energy to use its blasts. Next up is Turbo Annihilation and Titan mode. Turbo Annihilation mode was made to destroy the Earth, and Turbo Titan mode was made to match that power and defeat Turbo Annihilation mode. Next is less so a direct form and more so an ability, Turbo Duo Strike, which allows Max and Steel to combine two of their abilities and use them in the same form. There's only actually 3, maybe 4 of these. However, I think Max still can use it. The 3 forms are Turbo Spike Cannon, Turbo Sonic Flight, and Turbo Hydro Heat. Hydro Heat showing that this actually allows Max to create new powers from existing form, because his water suit doesn't allow him to shoot water, but when combined with the fire suit, it does. The next form could be argued to be a combo thing, but it doesn't specifically say it is. Turbo Exo Strength. It would make sense for this to be a combination of Strength and Titan mode, however it's not explicitly said, but regardless it is one of Max's strongest forms. If it's a fusion between Strength and Titan, I could see it being the strongest form, but if not, it's like second place under Titan. And that's the cutoff of the series being good. So that's where I'm gonna cut off his powers. So now, onto the fight. So Max and Ben appear in front of each other and begin to battle. Max, getting the first move, transforms into Turbo Strength, which is clearly one of his favorite forms. To counter this, Ben turns into his favorite form, Humongosaur. Max actually has Ben on the ropes for a bit here before Humongosaur grows, and Max grows in turn, but is not nearly as big as Humongosaur and so gets easily overpowered. Steel would suggest that they use speed to overwhelm Humongosaur since he's not very fast. So, Turbo Speed. Then Ben turns into Accelerate and very easily catches up with and defeats Turbo Speed. At least until Max uses Turbo Clone mode paired with Turbo Speed, which overwhelms Ben. So as one runs at him to punch him, Ben turns into Big Chill, freezing and destroying that clone. With Ben spraying his clones with ice, Max decides to stop focusing on the duplication and rather decides to change forms again. So Max turns into Turbo Heat and starts blazing at Big Chill. Ben then flies over Max and turns into Cannonbolt, rocketing down in his ball form. Max then goes Turbo Speed to get out of the way. So Ben turns into Gravitack. He enters his ball form, and Max starts spinning around in the air around him. So Max and Steel say, "Fine, you wanna have us? You can get us," and turn into Turbo Cannon mode, and then blast into Gravitack. As they collide with Ben, Ben turns into Upgrade. Steel tries to fight against the control of Ben, but Ben for a moment overtakes Steel, transforming Max back into his base turbo mode, as Ben turns into Lodestar and uses his electromagnetic powers to fling Steel miles away. Now while Steel is trying to get back to Max, Max is pretty defenseless. Max tries to run away, but Ben turns into Echo and surrounds him with a wall of sound. Luckily, Max's helmet would presumably help with avoiding hearing damage, and he sees Steel flying back into the distance as he shouts, "Turbo Spike!" And then he spins around in a circle, destroying almost all of the Echoes as Ben turns into another form. Ben turns into Diamond Head and uses his durability to catch both of the Spike Whips. He uses them to pull Max towards him, but Max transforms to blast Ben away with a Surge of Energy. In his Surge of Energy, Max turns into Turbo Rocket mode and begins rocketing the two into space. Ben can sense the danger and decides it's finally time to pull out the big guns. Ben turns into Atomics, and Max is confused when he hears Hamana 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 and then gets blasted around the Earth's atmosphere. Now the two don't land on the ground just yet and begin duking it out in the air. Very early on, Max turns into Turbo Flight to conserve energy, and Ben turns into Jet Ray, so it's a bit easier to keep up with Max. Because even though Atomics can fly, I don't think he's quite as fast as Turbo Flight, especially not Turbo Jet. During one of Max's strikes against Ben, Ben turns into blocks and forms a giant cube around Max, and purposely allows the two to start rocketing down towards the ground. Turbo Flight cannot create enough thrust to allow Max to fly up, and he considers using Turbo Jet again, but instead he decides to combine forms and use Turbo Strength Flight to punch through blocks and still fly in the air. Then Max turns into Turbo Super mode, much to his own detest, and punches blocks Ben into the ground. However, in a split second to save himself, Ben turns into NRG, who has indestructible armor. Ben fires a laser bolt into Max's face, but Max returns it with heat vision. Eventually, Ben just flies out of the suit as Max slams it into the ground. Max once again tries to fire laser vision into Ben, but Ben turns into Chroma Stone and absorbs the energy, blasting it back at Max. To this, Max accepts it as a challenge and is like, "Oh yeah? You want power?" and blasts at Ben with Turbo Nova mode. Ben then turns his defeat back and absorbs all of it, and Max is astonished and low on energy. So Max combines Turbo Stealth with Turbo Speed to run away very fast while almost untraceable. Max gets away for just enough time to recuperate a solid amount of energy while Ben tracks him as Wild Mutt. Max gets a surprise attack on Ben by using Turbo Strength Stealth. Ben then turns into Diamond Head and creates a dome around the two of them so that Max can't escape. He can't exactly see Max or hear him, but it at least allows Max not to get away. So Max turns into Turbo Strength Cannon mode and blasts the two of them super far into the distance due to the pure force of the mode. And then the two fall into the pier. Max goes Turbo Scuba while Ben turns into Water Hazard at first. Water Hazard is easily overpowered by Turbo Scuba, and so Ben turns into Ripjaws, making the fight far more even in Ben's favor. But then Max finally decides to pull out the big guns. The biggest guns. Turbo Titan mode. Or Turbo Exo Strength, whichever one of them is stronger. So Ben is like, "Oh yeah, fine, you want to bring out the big guns?" and turns into Way Big. Way Big is easily overpowering either of the modes that Max is using. So Max combines that form with Turbo Cannon mode, blasting Way Big back, before combining the initial form with turbo jet mode and flying the two into space. And the two keep duking it out in space until Max loses all of his energy and inevitably dies. So that's the conclusion. Do you think it would go any differently? Tell me in the comments. And how, too, I want to know. I don't want to just be like, you're wrong. I want an explanation. I want to have a conversation about this. Max's best chance was to defeat Ben before running out of energy, which was a safe bet in the beginning of the battle when the two of them would only be using the forms they necessarily need. However, once it got into the big giant guys, Ben had the clear advantage. Even best case scenario for Max here. There's just no way he's going to beat Wavy. Even if it was like Titan plus Exo Strength, if those modes are compatible, he's gonna run out of energy super fast before he can defeat Waybig. Hell, not to mention if Atomics gives him freaking cancer or something, or creates a miniature sun, or if Feedback absorbed all of Max's energy and then beat the shit out of him with it. The only way Max was going to win was in a battle with their simplest forms, but even then that would require Max know that, be prepared while Ben isn't, because if Ben knew that was the only way Max could defeat him, he would just turn into Waybig and beat his ass or wait for it. To mention, some of Ben's strongest aliens barely showed up here. He didn't use Atomics to his fullest, he didn't use Gravitak to his fullest. I don't know if there's any way for Max to win here, because at the end of the day, even at Max's absolute peak prime strongest, he has to worry about energy consumption, while Ben just doesn't with Master Control, and even if he does have to worry about timing out, the Omnitrix is going to make sure he doesn't die with its failsafes. Which, don't get me wrong, I don't think those make Ben immortal or anything, but there's no way Max could overpower it, especially not the way I made the fight play out. I do think there are other choices that they could have made throughout the battle that would have perhaps weighed it in one way or the other, but at the end of the day, Maxwell McGrath does not beat Ben Tennyson in my eyes, but you have the opportunity to change my mind in the comments. In fact, I'll even have a vote on my community page. If you care enough to vote on whether you think Max or Ben would win, feel free to vote there. But I have been Eris, your humble host for the evening, and do not forget to like and subscribe!